the heart of this nation, under skies so blue,
there's a spirit that's stirring, values strong and true.
from the mountains to the prairies, from the cities to the sea, we stand for liberty, for faith and family. We're diving deep into the heart of what we believe.
Welcome to The Deep Dive, the show where we really try to cut through the noise and get straight to the insights you need.
Giving you the context to understand the complex machinery of the world around you.
Exactly. And today we're not just observing, we're really plunging into the high-stakes world of Washington, D.C. Specifically, the intense political maneuvering around presidential nominations in the Senate.
Yes. The confirmation battles.
You know, those headlines that often feel like just a blur of accusations, procedural roadblocks, maybe some partisan gridlock.
It can be hard to follow the actual why.
We're going to unpack that why behind them today, giving you hopefully a crystal clear understanding of the strategic chess game really at play.
And it is a chess game. What might appear on the surface to be, a dry bureaucratic process, the confirmation of presidential nominees is, in reality, a critical battleground.
Right. It's where the rubber meets the road for a president's ability to actually implement their agenda.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Every single appointment, you think about it, from judicial positions that shape the law for generations.
I have impact there.
To ambassadors who define our nation's standing on the global stage. Each one profoundly impacts the executive branch's capacity to function, to pursue its policy goals.
So the resistance we see, it's deeper.
Oh, absolutely. The resistance encountered here, like the kind we're discussing today, it signals much deeper conflicts than mere disagreements over, say, individual qualifications.
Okay, so our mission today is really to uncover just how a process that maybe on paper seems fairly straightforward, how it can devolve into such a fierce partisan struggle.
We're going to explore the specific strategies used by different political factions, the accusations they tend to hurl at each other.
And crucially, the profound long-term implications of these tactical decisions for how our government actually functions, or doesn't function sometimes.
Right. And this isn't just, insider baseball for political junkies. It's about understanding the fundamental principles of leverage negotiation.
Yeah, and the constantly shifting dynamics of power within our democratic institutions. It applies everywhere, really.
For this particular deep dive, we're drawing insights from a recent article that offers a fascinating and quite direct look into Senator Markwayne Mullin's perspective.
Okay, Mullin, from Oklahoma.
That's him. He details President Trump's approach to these Senate confirmations and the Democratic resistance, painting a very clear picture of the Republican strategy as it stands in, early August 2025, according to the source.
So it's a specific viewpoint pulling back the curtain on how they perceive this ongoing conflict.
Precisely. It's one side's narrative, but a detailed one.
Okay. So by the end of this deep dive, you, listening, sort of have a much clearer picture of what's really happening when the Senate is locked in these confirmation battles.
This isn't just about consuming news. It's a shortcut to being truly well-informed on a pressing issue.
An issue that affects really everything from judicial rulings to international relations. So let's unpack this complex interplay of power and procedure.
Let's do it. All right, let's set the scene for this core conflict in the Senate, because it's a situation that has truly been boiling over for quite some time now.
It's not new, but it seems to have reached a new peak.
We're talking about the persistent struggle to confirm President Donald Trump's nominees. And while, this isn't a new issue, our source highlights a particular peak in tension as of early August 2025.
And the source for that is Senator Mullin's discussion.
Yeah, detailing Oklahoma Senator Markwayne Mullin's candid discussion with Maria Bartiromo on Sunday Morning Futures. This conversation gives us a direct window into the Republican perspective and their current strategic mindset regarding these confirmations.
Okay. And what's truly fascinating here, as we touched on, is that Senate confirmations are an absolutely critical aspect of a president's ability to govern, to actually implement their agenda.
It's not just symbolic.
Not at all. Think about it. Every federal department head, every agency chief, every U.S. attorney, every ambassadorship, every judicial vacancy, the list goes on.
Right. Each of these roles requires Senate confirmation. These individuals are the ones who translate a president's vision into concrete policy, from environmental regulations to trade agreements.
So when you see this sustained level of resistance.
Exactly. When you see the sustained level of resistance to a president's nominees, it signals much more than just, disagreements over individual qualifications or suitability.
It points to deeper issues.
It often suggests fundamental disagreements about the direction of policy, or maybe even a deliberate strategy by the opposing party to sort of hobble the executive branch.
Make it harder for them to operate.
Yeah, prevent it from effectively carrying out its mandate. In essence, the confirmation process itself becomes a potent political tool, a lever to exert influence far beyond the specific nominee being considered.
And this situation, as the article tells us, it escalated dramatically with a very specific interaction. Something about a proposed deal.
A deal that Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat from New York, apparently put on the table.
And this wasn't just a casual offer, was it?
No, according to the source, it marked a significant moment in the standoff.
Okay, tell us about that deal.
Yes, the source details that Schumer's proposed deal was quite explicit and multifaceted. It amounted to the confirmation of what he termed a small tranche of nominations.
It's a small group.
Right, a small batch. But this confirmation was contingent upon two very specific concessions from the Republican side.
Okay, what were they?
Firstly, unfreezing funding, which implies existing funds that have been somehow paused or blocked.
Okay, so budgetary stuff.
And secondly, foregoing any additional rescissions packages.
Rescissions. Remind us what that is.
Sure, a rescission package is a legislative measure that cancels budget authority previously provided by Congress. So essentially, cutting existing spending that was already approved.
Got it. So unfreeze some money and promise not to cut other money.
That seems to be the gist of it. So this wasn't simply about getting a few nominees through. It was a clear attempt by the Democrats, according to this account, to leverage their procedural power within the confirmation process.
Leverage it for what?
To secure broader legislative or budgetary outcomes. It effectively tried to tie the executive branch's ability to staff itself to specific policy and spending demands.
Demands that were unrelated to the nominees' qualifications themselves.
That's the implication here, yes, unrelated to their fitness for the job.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, it wasn't just about getting qualified people into positions. That wasn't the main driver, perhaps.
According to Mullin's perspective, no.
It was about extracting significant policy and budgetary concessions sort of bundled into the deal.
That's the framing.
That feels like a classic Washington maneuver, doesn't it? A form of quid pro quo.
It is indeed a classic maneuver. Variations of this happen, though the public nature and the specific demands described here are quite stark.
Okay, so that was the offer. What was President Trump's response to this rather intricate package deal?
Well, according to Senator Mullin, Trump's response was unequivocal and blunt.
How blunt?
He declared no deal, instructed Republicans to walk away,
Just walk away.
and famously, reportedly, told Schumer to go to hell.
Wow. Okay, so no ambiguity there.
None whatsoever. It highlights a very firm, non-negotiating stance. It signals a deep unwillingness to engage in the kind of, horse trading that has often characterized Senate negotiations.
Especially on appointments.
Particularly when it comes to presidential appointments, yes. It suggests Trump viewed the nominations as a fundamental executive prerogative.
Something that shouldn't be bargained with.
Exactly. Shouldn't be held hostage to unrelated policy demands, and he chose to reject the premise of such a negotiation entirely.
This raises an important question for us and for you listening. What are the deeper implications of Trump's outright refusal here?
It's a big question.
What kind of message does it send, not just to Schumer and the Democrats, but maybe to future negotiating partners or adversaries about his willingness to compromise versus his determination to push for, maximal outcomes?
Well, his refusal sends a remarkably clear message. He views the confirmation process, or at least this aspect of it, as non-negotiable in terms of broader policy concessions.
A red line, essentially.
It seems so. Historically, presidents have often used a mix of carrots and sticks in Senate negotiations, right? Engaging in give and take to achieve their goals.
Sure, that's standard politics.
Trump's no-deal approach here, as Mullin describes it, marks a significant departure from that traditional transactional legislative dance.
So what's the alternative he's signaling?
It suggests a belief that his nominees should be confirmed based on their own merits, and that the process shouldn't be used as a bargaining chip for unrelated legislative priorities, especially not for what he likely perceives as opposition pet projects.
And the impact on future negotiations.
This kind of hardline stance can certainly shape future negotiations. It could potentially lead to a more confrontational approach from both sides.
Because the precedent is set.
Right. It sets precedent that such deals won't be entertained. It suggests a desire to break out of traditional negotiating patterns, preferring direct confrontation over incremental compromise.
Which forces the other side's hand, too.
It absolutely forces the opposing side to reevaluate their own leverage and tactics.
And Senator Mullin, it seems, had a very clear take on why this rejection was not just justifiable from his perspective, but strategically brilliant, almost a necessary act.
Yes, he strongly endorsed the move.
So Mullin was definitely not shy about expressing his strong support for Trump's decision. Our source quotes him directly, stating he was proud of President Trump.
Strong words.
And firmly believed he had to walk away from Schumer's offer. Mullin explicitly stated that by refusing Schumer's deal, quote, "We put them on notice and said, we're not going to play games with you anymore."
That is pretty direct.
It signifies a fundamental shift in Republican tactics, doesn't it? No more games.
It is remarkably strong language, and it speaks to a deeper strategy. Mullin frames Trump's decision as a necessary escalation.
Necessary why?
Designed to break what he perceives as a cycle of obstruction and procedural gamesmanship by the Democrats.
So it's not just about this deal.
Exactly. This isn't merely a rejection of this particular deal. It's a clear signal of a broader, more aggressive shift in Republican strategy regarding Senate confirmations.
What's the implication of that shift?
The implication is that the previous approach, maybe attempting to negotiate or compromise, had been ineffective or perhaps even counterproductive in their view.
So a new, firmer stance was needed.
That's the argument.
Yeah.
A new, firmer stance was required to force a resolution. It's an assertion that the existing legislative norms were being exploited, and thus a different path was needed.
And this is where it gets particularly insightful regarding the Republican calculation, their long game, perhaps. Mullin went on to say, and I'm quoting him directly here from the source, "So now you're forcing us to change Senate rules, which, honestly, in the long run, is the best thing."
Wow. That's quite an admission.
It's a stark admission, suggesting they view this confrontation as an opportunity, maybe even a necessity, to fundamentally alter the rules of engagement in the Senate.
What's truly fascinating here is that Mullin is openly discussing the long-term strategic goal. It extends beyond the immediate confirmation battles.
How so?
By forcing this confrontation and rejecting the deal, the Republican side, or at least Mullin, believes they are creating the conditions necessary for a fundamental structural shift in how the Senate operates regarding confirmations.
Because they see the current rules as flawed.
They view the current rules as being exploited for obstruction, leading to legislative gridlock. Mullin's statement suggests that this rejection of the deal isn't just a tactical victory in the moment.
It's a setup.
It's a calculated step to trigger systemic change. It's a very clear message. If you won't play by the implied rules of reasonable negotiation, we'll change the explicit rules to ensure governance.
That's a heavy message.
It is. This philosophy reflects a growing sentiment, I think, in highly polarized legislative bodies. When traditional compromise fails, institutional reform, even if unilateral, becomes a viable or even preferred option for the side in power.
So why should you, the listener, care deeply about this particular exchange? I mean, it sounds like inside baseball, Senate rules.
But it's not.
This isn't just some abstract political squabble or a procedural technicality. This reveals a crucial aspect of how legislative bodies adapt or are forced to adapt their internal rules.
Especially in response to sustained gridlock and perceived obstruction.
Right. If one side believes the process is being unfairly exploited to the point of, say, incapacitating the executive branch, they will look for ways to alter the rules of engagement.
Even if it means employing drastic measures, like the nuclear option, which I'm sure we'll get to.
Understanding this helps you predict future legislative efficiency or, frankly, inefficiency, and how the Senate might actually function in the coming years.
It shows how the actions of today can directly lead to significant, lasting shifts in the balance of power dynamics within our government.
This isn't just about who gets a specific job. It's about the foundational structure of governance itself, how things actually get done or don't.
Precisely. The push and pull over these nominations impacts everything, from the speed at which the administration can staff critical national security positions.
Yeah, that's crucial.
To judicial vacancies that shape the future of law for generations. It's about the very capacity of the government to function effectively.
All right, so we've heard Senator Mullin's strong take on President Trump's refusal to deal, framing it as this strategic move to force rule changes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's pivot to the Democratic opposition and their tactics, because they, of course, have their own narrative, their own set of accusations.
Naturally. Two sides to every story.
Our source details how Minority Leader Chuck Schumer publicly characterized Trump's nominees. How did he describe them?
Broadly as historically unqualified.
Historically unqualified. That's a strong claim.
It is. And this is clearly the Democratic narrative, designed to justify their resistance and set the stage for their procedural blocking.
So what's the strategy behind using that specific phrase, historically unqualified?
Well, this characterization is a key strategic move in political warfare. By publicly questioning the qualifications of nominees, opponents aim to undermine both public support and political support for those individuals.
Makes sense. You attack the nominee, not just the policy.
Exactly. It provides a kind of moral or professional justification for their obstructionist tactics. It effectively shifts the debate away from policy differences or pure procedural blocking
Towards competence.
towards an issue of competence and suitability. If you can convince the public and maybe fellow lawmakers that the nominees are objectively unqualified, then the resistance is framed as a matter of principle, responsible governance.
Not just partisanship.
Right. Rather than pure partisanship.
Right.
It attempts to put the onus on the president for submitting allegedly inadequate candidates rather than on the Senate for impeding the process.
And Mullin, as our source notes, his reaction to that claim.
He was having none of it. Called it laughable.
Laughable. Okay, so there's a clear and profound disagreement on the basic premise here, a fundamental clash of narratives. But Mullin took it a step further, didn't he? He offered a very different and quite provocative interpretation of Schumer's underlying motives, moving beyond just qualifications.
Mullin indeed leveled a very strong and very public accusation against Schumer.
What was the accusation?
He claimed that Chuck Schumer, quote, tried to extort President Trump for $1 billion in liberal pet projects.
Extort, using that specific word.
Yes, extort, in all caps in some reports apparently. And he added, even to speed up over 50 bipartisan nominee confirmations.
Wow. So tying confirmations, even bipartisan ones, to $1 billion for pet projects.
That's the claim Mullin made. This is a powerful counter-narrative as it completely reframes the situation.
How so?
It shifts it from a debate about nominee suitability to a stark assertion of political transactionalism. It suggests that the Democrats' true motive wasn't about qualifications at all,
But about money and projects.
but about using the confirmation process as a blunt instrument to extract unrelated policy and financial concessions.
Extort is undeniably a loaded word. Very negative connotations. What does that specific choice of language imply about the nature of this negotiation, if Mullin's claim is accurate?
Well, if Mullin's claim is accurate, it transforms the picture from a principled dispute over qualifications into a negotiation where specific policy demands these liberal pet projects for $1 billion were explicitly tied to procedural cooperation on nominations.
Making the nominations just a bargaining chip.
Exactly. It suggests that the nominations themselves were merely a bargaining chip, a lever to gain unrelated legislative priorities, rather than the core issue. It paints a vivid picture of hardball politics, where the confirmation process is just one piece of a much larger, and in this framing, a financially driven legislative puzzle.
And using the word extortion.
Accusations of extortion in Washington are rare and signify a complete breakdown of trust. It implies that one side is using illicit, or at least highly unethical pressure to gain an advantage. It's a charge that aims to delegitimize the other side's actions entirely.
And Mullin didn't just say this on TV, right? He repeated it.
No, he reiterated it directly on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter. He doubled down, adding weight to his accusation and concluding with that now famous line.
Trump told them to pound sand.
Trump told them to pound sand, exactly. This public digital repetition adds to the narrative of one side playing extremely hardball and the other refusing to be intimidated, reinforces that confrontational stance.
It absolutely does. And this raises an interesting point for speculation, maybe for you listening too. How common are these types of backroom deals in Washington, where unrelated legislative items get tied to procedural votes on confirmations?
It's tricky. Quid pro quos are certainly part of the legislative process. That's how deals get made sometimes. But a public accusation of extortion at this level suggests a breach of unspoken norms, maybe going too far.
And the danger of that.
Such public accusations can further poison bipartisan relations, making genuine compromise even more difficult. Every negotiation gets viewed through a lens of deep suspicion and distrust.
Leading to more gridlock.
It risks entrenching a perpetual trench warfare mentality in Congress, where every interaction is viewed as a zero-sum game. Less gets done.
Which brings us to another critical procedural tool in the Senate and the accusations flying around it, the filibuster.
Ah, yes, the filibuster.
Mullin stated that Democrats have, quote, filibustered every single one of the 131 confirmed nominees.
Every single one.
Except Marco Rubio. That's what the source quotes him saying. And then he turns the tables saying Democrats are going to scream, saying we're doing the nuclear option. No, Chuck Schumer and the Democrats did the nuclear option because they have filibustered.
That's a fascinating reframe.
It is. He's attempting to shift the blame for any future procedural escalations, like using the nuclear option, directly onto the Democrats because of their past actions.
It is indeed a fascinating reframe, and it's central to the Republican narrative here. Let's maybe clarify a couple of key concepts here for you, the listener, because they are crucial to understanding this dynamic.
Good idea. Filibuster first.
Okay, the filibuster. It's a procedural tool in the Senate, primarily used by the minority party, to delay or block a vote on a bill, or, as in this case, a nomination.
How does it work, basically?
It typically requires 60 votes to overcome, to invoke cloture and end debate, meaning that a minority of just 41 senators can prevent action, even if a simple majority supports it.
And its use has increased.
Oh, dramatically. While you're likely familiar with its existence, it's worth noting that its use, particularly for nominations, has escalated significantly over recent decades. It's transformed from an occasional delaying tactic into a much more pervasive form of obstruction.
Okay, so that's the filibuster. Now, the nuclear option sounds dramatic.
It is. This is a procedural maneuver that allows the Senate to overcome a filibuster by changing its own rules with just a simple majority vote, rather than the supermajority, historically 67 votes, though often 60 for many rules changes, typically required for amending Senate rules.
Why nuclear?
It's called nuclear because it's considered a drastic step that bypasses traditional procedural safeguards, fundamentally changing the balance of power.
And it's been used before.
Oh, yes. Famously deployed by both parties in recent history. Democrats under Harry Reid in 2013 used it to eliminate the 60-vote threshold for most presidential nominations, excluding the Supreme Court.
And then Republicans.
Then Republicans under Mitch McConnell expanded in 2017 to include Supreme Court nominees, getting Justice Gorsuch confirmed.
So Mullin's argument is?
Mullin is essentially arguing that the Democrats' consistent and widespread use of the filibuster for nearly all nominees, as he claims, has necessitated the potential for a further expansion of the nuclear option.
He's saying you started it.
Or rather, you forced our hand by making the system unworkable with your constant filibustering. It's a preemptive justification for a move that would further alter minority rights in the Senate, essentially saying the Democrats' actions made it necessary.
So why does this specific procedural fight matter to you, listening at home or in your car?
Well, the filibuster and the nuclear option are not just arcane parliamentary procedures. They are critical components of how laws and appointments actually get made.
Or, crucially, don't get made.
Exactly, in the U.S. Senate.
Mm.
If you understand how these tools are deployed and the rhetorical strategies surrounding them, like one side blaming the other for necessitating a rule change, it illuminates the real bottlenecks in governance.
It shows how the Senate's own internal rules can either help or severely hinder a president's ability to govern.
And how those very rules become a central part of the partisan battle itself. This isn't just about a single vote on a single nominee.
It's about the fundamental operational capacity of American policymaking. It directly impacts judicial vacancies, regulatory appointments, the overall efficiency of the federal government, everything.
It's about how much leverage the minority retains and how much power the majority can ultimately wield. The implications for policy implementation and the balance of power are truly far-reaching.
Okay, so given this landscape, the Democratic opposition, Schumer's alleged deal, Mullin's strong accusations, the filibuster fight, it sounds like Republicans have decided to change their approach entirely.
A shift in strategy.
Yes, shifting from perhaps traditional negotiation to a more assertive stance. Our source explicitly states that, quote, Senate Republicans have seemingly learned a lesson and decided to play hardball with the Democrats.
Learned a lesson and play hardball.
Yeah.
That's telling language.
It isn't just an offhand comment. It implies a significant and deliberate shift from a previous, maybe less confrontational approach to how they conduct business in the Senate.
Yes, playing hardball in this context, it suggests a calculated willingness to escalate, to refuse concessions that might have been made in the past,
And use every tool available.
and to strategically utilize every procedural lever available to them. It means taking a more aggressive, less compromising stance.
One that prioritizes.
Prioritizes achieving their objectives through confrontation and the assertion of potential majority power, or at least the credible threat of it.
So less focus on finding common ground.
Perhaps. Rather than seeking common ground or incremental gains through traditional negotiation and compromise, this strategy aims to force the opposition's hand by making the status quo untenable for them.
It's a risk, though.
It's a calculated risk, yes. Betting that the Democrats will eventually buckle, or maybe that the public will perceive their obstruction as unreasonable.
And it changes the Senate's character.
Well, it certainly represents a departure from the Senate's historical identity, or at least its self-image, as a body valuing deliberation and consensus. It moves things towards a more majoritarian, confrontational model.
And interestingly, the source also points out that President Trump himself publicly praised the Senate GOP's efforts on this front. Where was that?
On Truth Social, according to the article.
Which is a crucial detail, isn't it? It indicates a unified front on this new, tougher strategy.
Absolutely. It suggests this isn't just a rogue senator's opinion, but a coordinated party approach with buy-in from the highest echelons of Republican influence.
That public endorsement from President Trump is crucial for several reasons, then.
Absolutely. First, it validates Leader Thune's leadership and the strategy being employed, both internally within the Republican Party and externally to the public.
No daylight between Trump and Senate leadership on this.
Exactly. It ensures that there's no perceived daylight between the former president, who remains a dominant figure, and the Senate leadership on this critical issue. Second, it signals to their base that the party is united and committed to this more aggressive approach.
And to the Democrats.
And third, it sends an unmistakable message to the Democrats that the Republican side is not fractured and their resolve in this standoff is firm, bolstered by the most influential voice in their party. It really solidifies the idea that this is a coordinated, singular effort, making it more potent.
Okay, so if playing hardball is the chosen strategy, what's the big next play on the Republican chessboard, according to Mullin?
He was very explicit about this.
Senator Mullin explicitly states the next play is a rule change. He says Republicans are going to be working on rules change through the August recess.
Planning it out.
And the goal is to implement those rules change upon their return. The ultimate objective, he explains, is to, quote, overpower Dems, expedite the nominees as a permanent solution.
Permanent solution. That wording is significant.
It sounds like a drastic institutional shift they're aiming for.
This is presented as a fundamental and potentially irreversible shift in how the Senate operates regarding nominations. It's not just a temporary tactic to get a few more nominees confirmed.
It's changing the rules of the game.
It's about fundamentally re-engineering the Senate's procedural landscape, specifically designed to remove or significantly reduce the minority party's ability to obstruct nominations.
And permanent solution implies.
When Mullin says permanent solution, he's indicating a desire for a structural change that would streamline the confirmation process, even in the face of strong, sustained opposition, presumably for the long term.
How would they do that? Usually changing rules needs a supermajority.
Well, historically, yes. Changing Senate rules requires a supermajority. But the nuclear option, as we discussed, allows a simple majority to achieve it for certain things, like nominations.
So they'd use the nuclear option again, potentially?
That seems to be the strong implication. The fact that they are described as working on this through August implies a deep strategic planning effort to ensure they have the votes and the procedural readiness to implement this significant change upon return.
This definitely raises a lot of questions about the long-term consequences, doesn't it?
Huge questions.
If they successfully implement such a rule change, particularly one that empowers a simple majority over the minority on nominations even further, what does that mean for the very nature of governance and bipartisan cooperation in the Senate?
It means profound changes, and the consequences are complex, potentially cutting both ways.
How so?
On one hand, from the perspective of the majority party, It could lead to significantly more efficient governance, right? They'd face fewer roadblocks in populating key government roles and implementing their agenda.
Less gridlock, potentially.
Potentially less gridlock, which has characterized Washington for years. However, on the other hand,
What's the downside?
it could further erode bipartisan cooperation. It could empower simple majorities to push through agendas and appointments without significant input or compromise from the minority.
So it's a trade-off.
It really boils down to a critical trade-off.
Mm.
Is procedural efficiency worth the potential cost of further polarization, a reduction in consensus building, and the weakening of minority rights in a body traditionally designed to protect them?
The Senate as the cooling saucer.
Right. The Senate, often called the cooling saucer of American politics,
Mm.
might lose some of its unique deliberative character if such changes become routine or expanded.
And it could lead to escalation.
It could also lead to a cycle where each party, when in the majority, unilaterally changes rules to their advantage, creating a legislative landscape where the rules of the game are constantly in flux. Less stability.
And for you, the listener, again, this isn't just arcane Senate arcana. Why does this matter directly?
Potential rule changes directly impact the balance of power in Washington and the speed at which presidential administrations can populate key government roles.
Think about it. Every department head, every federal judge, every ambassador, these roles directly affect policy implementation across the board.
From economic regulations that impact your daily life,
To foreign relations that shape global events.
a change in how quickly they can be confirmed has real, tangible effects on how effectively the government can function and whether a president can truly implement their vision.
It's about shifting the very capacity of government to act. Is it easier or harder for them to get things done?
It's about how much leverage the minority retains and how much power the majority can wield. The implications are far-reaching, fundamentally altering the checks and balances within the legislative process itself.
Let's turn to the numbers now, because Senator Mullin brought some very specific data points to the table, seemingly as evidence that their current approach, this hardball approach, is working despite the opposition.
Okay, what numbers did he cite?
He provided a direct comparison between 2017 and 2025. He says that as of early August 2025, 131 nominees have been confirmed.
Okay, 131.
But here's the kicker. At the same time in 17, so presumably early August 2017 under the previous Trump term, only 55 were confirmed.
55 versus 131.
Yeah, that's a pretty stark difference, more than double the rate.
Wow, that numerical comparison is presented as clear and compelling evidence of effectiveness, isn't it?
Seems to be the goal.
Demonstrating that despite the perceived opposition and strategic blocking, the current Republican strategy is yielding significantly higher confirmation rates.
So Mullin is using these figures to argue.
To argue, look, our hardball approach, our willingness to engage in this procedural battle is working, and it's working better than the previous approach. It's a quantitative justification for their escalated tactics.
Highlighting a big increase in getting people into jobs.
A substantial increase in the executive branch's ability to staff its positions and, by extension, implement its agenda. It suggests that even if it's the hard way, as he puts it, it's proving more fruitful by this metric.
And he emphasizes that this progress hasn't been easy. It's come at a significant procedural cost, right?
Yes, he stressed that point.
Mullin highlights that this success has been achieved despite Democrats choosing the hard way, forcing the Senate to have, quote, stayed in more consecutive days than we have in 15 years.
15 years, wow.
And taken more votes than we have in 35 years.
35 years on the votes. That really illustrates the immense effort and procedural intensity involved.
Getting these 131 confirmations through the legislative bottleneck wasn't simple.
No, it paints a vivid picture of a legislative body working at an extraordinary pace, exhausting every procedural avenue, rather than relying on routine consent or bipartisan cooperation.
And from Mullin's perspective.
From Mullin's perspective, it underscores the level of deliberate obstruction that, in his view, necessitated this intensity, and in turn, justifies the push for fundamental rule changes.
The grind itself is the justification.
The sheer volume of consecutive days in session and votes taken suggests that every single nominee, almost, has been a battle. A testament to the minority's willingness to use every tool to slow the process.
And the majority's determination.
And the majority's equal determination to push through despite it. This grind, they argue, is precisely what makes the rule change a necessity, not just a preference.
Now, who's getting the credit for managing all this intense procedural work and achieving the increased confirmation rate?
Mullin pointed fingers, didn't he?
Yes. Mullin directly attributes the current confirmation success to the leadership and effectiveness of Leader Thune, John Thune.
Okay, Senate Majority Leader Thune.
He even references Thune's early stance back in 2017, where Thune essentially laid down the gauntlet to Democrats, stating, according to Mullin, "We can do this the hard way or easy way,"
implying the choice was theirs.
suggests a consistent strategic vision from Thune, perhaps.
This highlights the absolutely critical importance of leadership within the Senate in navigating these incredibly complex procedural battles and effectively managing the Senate floor. Thune is being presented here as a key architect of this current, more aggressive strategy.
And that 2017 quote?
His quote from 2017 demonstrates a long-standing awareness that the Senate might be forced into a more confrontational approach if cooperation wasn't forthcoming. It implies that strategic guidance from the top is essential for pushing through such a large volume of confirmations under challenging circumstances.
Especially when breaking old patterns.
Especially when the goal is to break previous patterns of obstruction. A Senate leader must not only understand the rules, but also have the political will and the votes to deploy them fully.
And here's where we get even more confirmation of that unified Republican front we talked about earlier. It wasn't just Mullin praising Thune.
Who else?
President Trump himself publicly praised Thune alongside Speaker Mike Johnson on Truth Social.
Ah, yes. The Truth Social post.
He specifically stated, "A great job being done by Leader John Thune and Speaker Mike Johnson." And the article notes this directly refutes any mistaken impression that Thune might have been working against Trump.
Which was apparently a narrative out there.
So this unified front among key Republican leaders, Trump, Thune, Johnson, it adds significant credibility to the claims of strategic success.
Absolutely. Shows clear alignment on this aggressive approach.
That public praise from President Trump, as we noted, is a powerful signal, both internally and externally.
It validates Thune's leadership and the strategy, making sure there's no perceived daylight between Trump and Senate leadership on this critical issue.
Which is potent politically.
Especially in today's political climate, where internal unity is often as important as external strategy. It really solidifies the idea that this is a coordinated, singular effort, making their hardball approach more effective and less susceptible to internal dissent.
Okay, one last point Mullin clarified. Something about recess appointments.
Ah, yes. That came up.
He addressed a specific misconception that might be floating around, the idea that President Trump was somehow blocked from making recess appointments.
What did Mullin say?
Mullin explicitly states, nobody blocked Trump from recess appointments. And then he explains, we spent 3 days working with the president 24/7. All options were on the table, including recess appointments.
So it was considered.
It sounds like a very deliberate choice not to use them, not a limitation imposed on them.
This is a crucial clarification. It speaks to the depth of their strategic planning. A recess appointment, let's remind listeners.
Please do.
It's a presidential appointment made when the Senate is in recess, without needing immediate Senate confirmation. It's a significant tool of executive power, allowing an administration to temporarily fill positions and bypass a difficult Senate.
But they're temporary.
That's the key. Such appointments are temporary and expire at the end of the next Senate session, typically after about a year or so.
So Mullin's statement suggests
that the decision not to use recess appointments here was a deliberate strategic choice, not a failure to secure the option.
Why choose not to?
Instead of a temporary bypass, which might have yielded short-term gains but wouldn't have resolved the underlying issue, they opted for what Mullin calls a permanent solution through rule changes.
Ah, back to the rule changes.
Exactly. This indicates a preference for a long-term structural fix to the confirmation process, rather than a series of temporary workarounds, even if that means enduring more immediate legislative friction.
It reinforces their commitment to fundamentally altering the rules of the game.
Rather than just playing within the current and what they see as restrictive ones.
And all these intricate details, the impressive confirmation numbers, the unified leadership, the deliberate choices regarding procedural tools like recess appointments, they all contribute to a very clear takeaway from the Republican perspective, don't they?
They paint a coherent picture of their strategy.
A picture which sets the stage for significant implications for future governance. It paints a picture of a party willing to push the boundaries of Senate tradition for long-term strategic advantage.
A calculated gamble, perhaps.
So we've dissected the details, the numbers, the accusations, the procedural chess moves. Now, let's zoom out a bit and look at the broader implications.
The big picture.
Particularly through the lens of what the source calls the bed they made principle.
That phrase.
The core takeaway from the article, from the Republican perspective articulated by Mullin, is that since the Democrats are hell-bent on being obstructionists, when they return, they're going to get to lie in the bed they made for themselves.
That idiom, lie in the bed they made, it's a powerful and very common way to frame the consequences of political actions in Washington. Very evocative.
What does it mean in this context?
In this context, it suggests that the Democrats' consistent tactics of obstruction and filibustering, as perceived by Republicans, will directly lead to the very rule changes that limit their own power in the future when they are in the minority.
So the rule change isn't just aggression, it's consequence.
It frames the upcoming rule changes not as an act of aggression or a unilateral power grab by the Republicans, but as a direct, almost inevitable response to the Democrats' prior actions. It's presented as a classic case of cause and effect in the political arena.
Current behavior dictates future leverage.
Exactly. Where current behavior is presented as dictating future leverage and institutional norms, it implies a sense of, well, just desserts, that the Democrats are simply receiving the natural outcome of their chosen strategy.
This leads us to speculate, though. What does this imply for future bipartisan cooperation in the Senate? Does this approach?
The lie in the bed they made approach.
Yeah, where one side forces a major rule change due to perceived obstruction, does it just deepen political divides, create even more entrenched partisan lines?
That's one possibility.
Or, paradoxically, could it eventually lead to a new, perhaps more efficient way of operating within a highly polarized system, even if it's less about consensus and more about simple majority rule?
It's a critical, almost existential question for the Senate. On one hand, stripping away minority procedural tools, especially ones that have been cornerstones of Senate tradition,
Like the filibuster for nominations.
could be seen as a declaration of perpetual warfare, making genuine cooperation and negotiation even rarer than they are now. It could lead to a tit-for-tat dynamic where each party, when in the majority, unilaterally changes rules to suit its agenda,
Creating instability.
creating an unstable legislative environment. However, on the other hand,
Another view.
some might argue that if the old system allowed for too much obstruction, leading to paralysis, then a streamlined process, even one achieved through unilateral rule changes, could allow for more effective governance in a polarized age where traditional compromise is increasingly difficult to find.
So the bed they made narrative suggests?
It suggests a belief that the Democrats will simply have to adapt to a new reality, one they themselves allegedly created, implying a fundamental shift in the expectations of how power is wielded and how legislative business gets conducted in the Senate.
The goal isn't compromise anymore, perhaps.
The goal, from this perspective, seems to be less about compromise and more about overcoming perceived paralysis, ensuring the majority can govern.
And to wrap up this broader perspective, our source includes something else in the editor's note.
Ah, yes, the note at the end.
It introduces a very specific and impactful narrative. President Trump is leading America into the golden age as Democrats try desperately to stop it.
That frames the entire political struggle in very grand, almost Manichaean terms.
It's important for us, and for you listening, to present this impartially, as it is a specific viewpoint from the source material, but one with significant rhetorical power.
Absolutely. We're reporting the viewpoint, not endorsing it.
This narrative frames the entire political struggle, not merely as a debate over policy differences or procedural tactics,
But as something much bigger.
as a fundamental battle over the direction and destiny of the nation itself. It suggests a high-stakes scenario where one side sees itself as actively leading the country towards an era of prosperity, innovation, progress, a golden age.
While the other side?
While the other side is characterized as actively, even desperately, trying to hinder or prevent that progress.
This type of framing is a powerful rhetorical device. It's designed to galvanize support among the base, to simplify complex issues into a clear narrative, often of good versus evil, or progress versus obstruction.
And assign clear roles.
Right, and to assign clear roles. It's about building a sense of urgency and historical inevitability around one's own agenda.
So for you, the listener, why is recognizing this important?
It's crucial to recognize how different political narratives frame events and assign blame or credit.
Understanding these underlying narratives, whether it's the Golden Age perspective here or the extortion claim we discussed earlier, helps you see the deeper political storytelling at play.
It allows you to critically evaluate the information you consume, moving beyond surface-level reports.
To interpret the news with a more informed, nuanced, and strategic perspective, it's about being aware of the lens through which information is being presented.
And the broader context that shapes how each side views the conflict and wants you to view it. It's about discerning the strategic intent behind the rhetoric, which is essential for being truly well-informed in today's political landscape.
Well, we've taken a serious deep dive today into the very intense world of Senate confirmations. A lot to unpack there.
Definitely a complex issue.
We've explored the strategic shift in how Senate Republicans are approaching these battles, President Trump's firm stance against what he viewed as a manipulative deal.
The go-to-hell moment.
Right. And the Republican drive for fundamental rule changes in response to what they perceive as democratic obstruction.
And despite all that legislative intensity, the procedural grind.
We saw that the numbers, at least according to Mullin, indicate a significant increase in confirmed nominees compared to the past.
It's a fascinating look at the procedural chess game that underpins so much of Washington's power struggles.
The battle over nominees, as we've seen, it really isn't just about qualifications, is it?
No, it's a high-stakes game of leverage and counter-leverage with profound long-term consequences for legislative power and efficiency. It reveals a willingness to challenge and potentially reshape the very institutional norms of the Senate.
And that leaves us with a provocative thought for you to ponder as you observe future legislative battles, maybe the next confirmation fight you read about.
What's the takeaway question?
What happens to the core nature of legislative compromise and consensus when a governing body, or at least a significant faction within it, decides that playing hardball and unilaterally changing the rules of the game is the only way forward?
Seeing it as a necessary response to perceived obstruction.
Exactly. Does it lead to more efficient governance in a polarized era? Or does it simply deepen the trenches of partisan divides, fundamentally altering the Senate's role in our democracy?
Something to definitely think about as you watch the next chapter unfold in this ongoing struggle for influence and procedure in Washington.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it's giving you a clearer, maybe more nuanced lens through which to view the ongoing complexities of our political system.
Hope it was useful.
We'll catch you next time.
In the heart of this nation, under skies so blue, there's a spirit that's stirring, values strong and true. From the mountains to the prairies, from the cities to the sea, we stand for liberty, for faith and family. We're diving deep into the heart of what we believe. Conservative values in our souls, they're interweaved. With courage and with honor, we'll hold our ground for freedom, for tradition in this land we found. We cherish our Constitution, the words that set us free, the right to bear arms, to speak and to agree.